Good afternoon. Welcome to Behind the Data. I'm Jez Clark, one of the co-founders of Eden Smith Group, and currently operating as the CEO. And this is the season one of Behind the Data. We're talking about building sustainable data teams. And I'm really excited because I have someone on today who I've known for a very long time. He's a good friend. We've worked together in the past. And I think he's going to have a lot of information to share, which I think all of you listeners are really going to enjoy. So a big welcome to you, Barry Green. How you doing, mate?
Hey, Jez, how are you? Good.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Now, Barry, you've been operating as a Chief Data Officer since about, I think, 2012. You've worked on large-scale transformations for well over 15 years now for some very big companies, the likes of Citigroup, HSBC, Allianz, Bank of Ireland, consulting over at PwC. So you've got a wealth of experience in data analytics and obviously financial services. And also, not to forget, you are co-author of Data Means Business, an Amazon bestseller, I hear. How's it going?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, we need to give Jason Foster a plug there because co-author with Jace. But
yeah, we do indeed. He's a good friend and a good guy as well. Did you enjoy writing the book?
Yeah, it was kind of cathartic actually because I think one of the difficulties that people who've been working in data for a while have is communicating their ideas to people in a way that's simple. And so the book really forced both of us to think about things which we just naturally thought, but actually when we asked ourselves the questions, how would you put that down simply, it was really problematic. So it was really cathartic because you actually really had to think about, how you said something in a way that hopefully people would understand, because the whole point of the book was to write about data in a non-data way for people who weren't involved in data, right? Because there's so many books on AI and analytics and CDOs and stuff. It was just like, maybe there's a market for people who just want to understand the basics about data.
Yeah, I think a lot of people overcomplicate the subject for one. There's a lot of over-innovation of terminology, I think, in the space, which makes it even more complicated. So it's great that you did it. I haven't actually read the whole book yet. I have started it. I'm just being completely honest, right? I'd rather be honest with you. But what I did read was insightful. So yeah, no, I hope it goes well. I hope the book sales go well, and fair play to you and Jason for writing it. I think what we're going to do today is obviously we're talking about building sustainable data teams, but there'll be a few questions in here also to help people get to know you. And also I'm hoping, as with all of the podcasts that we've done so far, it helps the community in one way, shape or form, whether you're already in data or you're looking for a career in data. So, I mean, let's kick it off. Like, how did you initially get into the data industry?
So I was at HSBC. I was running for the HR function, which was about 8,000 people at that point.
Wow.
$700 million budget, I think we had. And so I was running finance, I was running reporting, I was running procurement, and something else, it'd lose me, but it was a pretty big role. And then someone came along and said, we're thinking about starting up a CDO, and we need a CDO for HR. I said, well, let me try that. So I went to a few meetings, and we basically, between I think 7 of us, so Lorraine Waters was another one in that group, we basically set up the initial HSBC CDO.
Wow.
So that was kind of how I officially got into it, but actually I think I've been in it into data a long time.
Yeah, probably without knowing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what I kind of realised when we did the CDO thing at HSBC, is like, actually I know a lot about the subject. I just didn't realise I knew a lot.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of that going on in the industry per se. There's a lot of people out there that are in roles that are very data focused, but they don't actually know, which is what we're trying to pull out because of the skill shortage that we have in the industry across the whole piece. So, did you study anything particular when you started your career?
Well, I did a finance degree extramural, so I did that while I was working, and I did an executive MBA, but none of that was really data focused per se. There was no specialist, things about data reporting or any of that stuff. If I look back, Jez, I kind of look back, I was thinking the other day, when did I really start? So for me, I was working as a business analyst in business banking. So we wrote large loans for, for companies and things, and we were kind of like this prestigious part of the bank. This is back in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And these were the days when you had typists, right? So you used to
Yeah.
handwrite your letters out, and then you'd basically give them to the typist. And I'd like wait for 4 days because I was unimportant. And then I got to the point where I thought, this is crazy. I'm going to teach myself how to type, right? And in those days, a man typing was not very manly, to say the least, right? But for me, it was like, actually, if I can type my own letters, I can type them instead of handwriting them, and I don't have to give them to the typist. I can just send them out.
Yeah.
And so then I bought a computer, so I taught myself how to type, and then not long after that, I started creating models in Excel. And I was basically doing my job in half the time, right? And building models and then reusing them and doing stuff. And like everyone's going, how the hell are you doing all that? And I was like, well, I'm using this thing here. It's called a computer. And that's when I think I really got into it, because I realized how powerful it could be if you could automate things and you could reuse data, and you could you could create calculations effectively for like building big models, financial models, and then saying, if this farmer does this or if this business does that, these are the results. And so it allowed you to do a lot of analysis really quickly.
Start to get some kind of prediction of what you think is going to happen as well.
Yeah. And so that's where I really think I got into data. And then I was doing large change programs, and a lot of data is about actually convincing people and changing behavior and efficiencies, for me anyway. And so that's where it kind of started. So I don't want to tell you how many years, but a lot of years, a lot of years ago.
Well, yeah, don't show your age too much, because you're talking about typists. Was that moment there, was that like a pivotal moment in your career that's kind of kicked things off for you, or would you have said it was more the, let's create the chief data office for HSBC?
Well, so yes, the HSBC one was pivotal, because then I got the title of being a chief data officer. But I think that the big problem today is everyone wants to be the chief data officer tomorrow, and they don't want to do the hard work, right? So doing the typing, building the models, getting involved in change, all that stuff allowed me to build up a set of skills and capabilities that meant that I was changing jobs every 18 months. I got into, I've done all sorts of jobs, and just about every area of the of banking, and it allowed me to understand how things operated across the piece. And for me as a CDO, you need to have that ability to communicate across the business, understand the business, communicate to the marketing guys, the finance guys, everyone in every part of the business. Unless you've got experience, it's hard to do that without any even the formal training. I don't think gives you that stuff.
No, I agree. I mean, I think experience wins every time. I hear from a lot of other people that I speak to that, the communication across the business, it's almost like you're selling your what you're trying to achieve here, which, we don't want to be in that position, but ultimately when it's something fairly new, you have to. Would you have said that was one of the biggest obstacles of that journey, or were there other things that you found equally as challenging or more challenging to get things moving?
No, I think, and it's not just the selling, it's the communication of the message for the selling, because I think you have so much, people have had the experience or done things a few times. You have this innate knowledge, and it's really hard to not talk in a way that so that other people understand. So I've always kind of tried to come up with really simple messages. Like data is the new black was one of the ones I originally did.
I remember that.
But it's about having 3 or 4 really simple messages, and then communicating them over and over and over again, and basically telling everyone across the organization. And you kind of know you're successful when you're in a meeting and someone starts using your catchphrase like it's theirs, and you think, the message is finally getting through, right? But you can't underestimate, and I have to say I still struggle now, in fact probably more so, because my assumed knowledge is just getting more and more, and I get more and more assumed knowledge. I just think everyone must know this, and actually it's just not the case. So you've almost got to slap myself around and say, right, how do I communicate this to a 5-year-old? And it's hard, but it's absolutely fundamental.
Well, the industry's moving super fast as well, right? So, you know, we're doing some work and they're trying to build some kind of data curriculum because I've constantly got my head on there that, you know, as things change, they move fast. There's new technologies and new skill requirements. Like, how do we get that into the curriculum really, really quickly so that it actually can have an impact when they start work? It kind of brings me on to, you know, talking about people, because this show's about, you know, building what we, and I said, not just about building data teams, but it's about building sustainable data teams, right? Ones that are going to last and ones that are going to work efficiently. And, you know, we got a lot of other things going on in industry at the moment with sustainability per se anyway, technology, how, you know, how we're managing that, and there could be a huge collection of data. What's your approach to building data teams? Do you follow a process? Do you follow a structure or an org design or anything like that you can share?
So I think each organisation is different. So I think you can have an idea of the archetypes that you might want. But I think the trick is to get and this sounds a bit of a useless comment really, but the truth is to really find a couple of really good people who are specialists, but they understand more than just their specialist area. So, you know, data scientists understands the business at a high level, or can do a bit of data engineering, or a data engineer who knows a little bit about data quality. So build teams where people you can give them different stuff initially, right? Because I find, and then I find also, you know, we talk about data people, if you like, but there's so much noise in the market with all these, you know, and the technology is moving so fast. For me, it's about looking for people who've got a natural curiosity.
Yeah.
It's about people who want to change and want to change things that don't work. And it's also people who are analytical, right? So, I mean, you can't have a whole team of people like that, but ideally when I'm starting, I want people like that, because I can allows them to pivot to different things. So it's interesting for them because those people are generally hungry to learn.
Yeah.
And it means that, you know, I can kind of send 5 people off in 5 different directions, and it allows me to get five answers and make a recommendation, so that as a team we can say, okay, those all seem to make sense, right? Go away and execute them, rather than trying to work on that kind of model where everyone sits around and agrees on everything. I've never really been a big fan of that. I just think break it up, give people responsibility, get them come back with a recommendation. Let's kick a recommendation around, and then let's execute on that idea. So kind of almost accountability.
Yeah. Has using that approach where you're looking for, you know, perhaps what I would call multiple skills, or in effect, maybe you're looking for hybrid compared to what the market might have to offer, because I have this conversation all the time, pretty much on a daily basis. Have you found it harder to recruit those people than if you'd gone for an architect, you know, a data architect, and not really too much outside the box, or a data engineer or data analyst? Has it been harder when you're trying to go hybrid a little bit?
No, so to how you ask the questions, right? So I've got one question I tend to ask in all my interviews, which is sort of say, you know, so we're in a meeting, and basically someone asks a question, and I've completely got the wrong end of the stick, and I've made the biggest cock up, right? It's like bad, just answering it wrong. What are you going to do? And there's no right answer here, right? And I've had some interesting answers that I hadn't even thought of. But the whole point of the question is that whatever they say, they're prepared to either front up to me at some point, or if they don't front up in the meeting, they do it in a way that doesn't make both of us look stupid.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like just asking questions like that, or, you know, I've seen so many people calling themselves data engineers, and I'm not a technical expert, but I asked them a few questions, and it's like, oh my God, you're still operating in like 1970. So I think it's really about constructing what you want, constructing the right questions to ask people, and then effectively, hopefully, because it doesn't always work, right? You think you've got the right person, it doesn't work. But, you know, 80% of the time, I'd say I've got it right most of the time now. Yeah. And it's just from kind of asking those right questions, and also telling people the truth, you know. So here's what you'll see, and here's the truth, right? So this is a mess. This is a mess. We've got to fix this up. This is a mess, but this is all the opportunities that gives you, right? You know, as opposed to this is all, it's all beautiful, and even greenfield stuff doesn't tend to be as easy as everyone thinks, right? So
no, I don't think I ever hear of a story which is like, roses straight away. It's always something's in a massive mess, or I hear of a lot of businesses that hire people into a role and then they actually can't perform the role because things aren't in the right place or state for them, or the tech's not there or whatever it might be. If you talk about talent strategy, and it's interesting because what I like about your background is obviously you were supporting a massive HR function in HSBC. I don't know any other CDOs that have come from your background, as in that you were doing something on quite a large scale there. From a talent strategy perspective, what do you think is the most important component?
For me, it's about allowing people to grow, so giving them the opportunity to learn so that they develop. But for me, it's also about making sure that I get people who want to take personal responsibility. And the reason I say that is because I think there's so much entitlement these days that if you don't have people who are prepared to put themselves out and contribute to their own benefit, for their own benefit, I just think you can run into issues with how if you have too many people like that, your team structure doesn't work. It breaks down. So it's not just, it's really about making sure that I've got the right people with the right attitude, as well as not just their skills.
Yeah.
So you support them, but you allow them to kind of, you expect them to kind of also develop themselves. They're interested in doing stuff for themselves as well.
So a good career path framework coupled with some freedom to allow people to personally develop, and you're looking for an attitude for people that want to also develop themselves personally as well, and giving them the environment to do so.
Yeah, and if you go back to my example, right, typing was not something that business analysts did, or it was given to a typist. So for all of those who don't know what a typist is, it was basically, we had a tea lady in the building as well at this point in time. So you gave your handwritten letter, and they typed it out and they gave it back to you, and you checked it and signed it and sent it out. And to me, I was, I taught myself how to type. I taught myself how to use Excel. So every morning I would come in early, do half an hour on the computer, and learn stuff. And after 6 to 12 months, not only could I type, but I was building models and doing all sorts of stuff that before I couldn't, right? None of that was, and if I'd asked for formal training, none of that was even on the list. So, I think it's important for people to say, what am I really interested in? And maybe that, they start doing something that means they change jobs and you lose them, but that's fine, right? Because then you're trying to grow people, and you can't expect people to stay with you forever. And, so you got to kind of give them that opportunity to really develop as well. That's just the way I think makes sense.
And so, what we're referring to right now is obviously people when they've already come on board with you and they're working in your team and all this sort of stuff, and you're making the most of it. Because when I talk about talent strategy, it could be around internal mobility, it could be training, career path, it could be succession, it could be, all these sorts of things that make it up. But obviously there's the bit before that, and I'd like to hear your views on the onboarding process. So you've worked for a number of big businesses, and none of those businesses, I imagine, are able to move fast. And as a recruiter, Eden Smith Staffing, you've got like the candidate or the job seeker experience. From an onboarding perspective, I think it's quite a critical stage. What does it look like where you're at the moment, for example? Would you say it's a good onboarding process, or where's the best you've seen? There you go, it's a different question.
So I think from a talent strategy, the best thing I've seen is when I was at Allianz, where we were looking at people on the spectrum, and we kind of had people come in and say, if you hire these people, you're going to have to manage them differently. You're going to have to give them this work in this way. And for me, that was really insightful, because they would do work that no one else in my team would want to do, but they could probably do it 20 times better, even if we did do it.
Yeah.
And it was about saying, actually, talent's not about hiring people who've got the same, same skills as you, or even are the same as you. That's where I kind of thought that whole cognitive diversity thing for me became kind of clicked in my head, and was like, yeah, that's like really important. So building a team that's got different skills, and thinking about what skills you really need to bring into the team. And if it's really super skills, it doesn't have to necessarily be someone who's at university, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of really big into apprenticeships too. I think apprenticeships are the way forward. I think going to university, doing a data science degree, getting all that debt. If you're good at maths and you're social, then why not take a job on where you get some money and you start to see if that's really what you want to do. And it may be that the skills you develop there take you in a completely different direction. But for me, I think apprenticeships are a much smarter way of, and I say that because I didn't do my degree at a university, I did it extramurally. I just think it's a smarter way of learning. You get money, you don't ladle yourself with debt. I just think it kind of makes sense. So those are the two things I think. Apprenticeships would be something that we also looked at, but also looking at different types of people that you could bring on board, not the standard.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on the whole university thing at the moment. I think what's when really apparent, we run the internship program Nurture, and you're seeing the cohort gets bigger and bigger each year. But obviously they don't all get placed. This is the thing. So there's more people coming through, but and they might be getting the qualification, but those that actually do take on an apprenticeship, or at least get work experience in an area which is perhaps connected through career pathway into data science, or something, I think is a better option. And of course, debt is awful for, especially when you're young. It cripples you for years. Let's talk about employee motivation and retention, right? So talent strategy again. We talk about retention. You've had some big teams. Have you ever experienced, problems with retention? And if so, how did you combat that? What have you done in the future to basically keep good motivation and retention in your teams?
So I don't know I'm the best person to answer that question, because I've tended to be in an interim role. So I've tended to be in there for kind of 2 years. So I've tended to build the team, hopefully left them motivated and running in the right direction. But for me, it's all about that, giving people responsibility, and kind of making sure that people demonstrate that they're worth doing something, and they don't just get a role because they're next in line and those sorts of things. And sometimes you lose people for that, but I think I've seen a lot of people think that they deserve a role, and they focus on all their energy on the fact that they deserve the role, rather than saying, actually, if I did this, I'd give myself a better skill set, and then they would, they automatically get the role as well. So I think that for me, it's all about that, giving people the ability to take responsibility for stuff, and then hopefully motivating them, with interesting work, and then supporting them. So even if something goes wrong, it's like that's your job to take the rubbish from either the people up top or other people in the organisation, right? Try and keep the flack away from them as much as possible.
You literally have just said, I was on listening to a presentation last week from a guy that retention is his topic, right? He's been doing it for 30 odd years, and he speaks all around the world about it. And funny that you said that you've been in interim, and it's not the sort of thing that maybe you're the best person to ask, but everything you just said is exactly what he said, right? It was around people need to feel significant. They need to feel like they're actually contributing. They need to have a variety of work, and they need to have love and connection with those around them and the business. Those components apparently are what keep us all there. And it's a very simple way of looking at it. But when you run something like a pulse survey or something like that to see how the people are in your business, actually, it can be quite enlightening, I would say. No, that's a great answer. Thank you. Let's talk about diversity. I've heard a lot from different people who talk about the benefits of having a diverse team. What's your view on that? What does having a diverse team mean to you?
So I'm going to be controversial here, right?
Okay.
I think that
Careful.
yeah, I know. I'm just trying to think how I word this. I think we talk about diversity in a super narrow band.
Yeah.
And for me, diversity is just about people who think differently, and it's their life experiences, and it may be their sex or their color has an influence on that, but that's not who, for me, that's generally not, that's not everything to do with diversity. So for me, it's really about understanding someone and understanding how they think.
Yeah.
And that diversity is what I need. I don't need people, and I've had so many people in my career who only wanted people that said, you're amazing, your ideas are amazing, you're a great boss. I don't mind people telling me I'm an idiot, as long as they explain why I'm an idiot. If I understand I'm an idiot, then I'll go away and fix that, right?
Yeah.
But I think that, and I think that openness of having a team where you can have that open conversation, and that's pretty difficult, especially in today's environment. But I think that for me, that's diversity, right? Where you can, you can voice your own opinion, and within closed doors, so that but also you can take it on board and you can kind of learn from it. And other people can, just because you're the boss doesn't mean to say you're always right. In fact, if you're doing it right, you should be learning from the people below you as well as what you're giving back. So it's not just a one-way street. And you need people to go, hey, what about doing it this way? Because I don't have all the answers.
No.
But having people who think a bit differently and challenging the way things work from their own experience, for me, that's diversity.
I like the way you've summed that up, the narrow band. I think you're absolutely right. All people are talking about is ethnicity, gender, all that sort of stuff. They're actually not thinking why. And it's the different ways of thinking that all of us have, no matter where, no matter who we are, background or anything like that, that is the bit that we're looking for in the teams. So it's actually good to highlight it, I think, for the listeners in that respect. If we talk about training and development of teams, some people do it, lots of people do it in different ways, right? Different mediums. They can do it through workshopping, they can do it through showing people, they can do it through tools and technology. Have you used anything specific or regularly throughout your career that you found the most effective?
Probably buddying up's been the most successful thing.
Okay.
Is just letting someone buddy up with someone who knows what they're doing. And again, you get that kind of diversity, because sometimes I think not knowing stuff, you ask the right questions, there's that kind of assumed knowledge you don't necessarily. So I think buddying up is probably the most successful way of seeing things. It can be a bit prohibitive, because you're effectively taking out, you're reducing the number of people you've got to be productive. But then that's just, I've seen so many people go on training courses and do certificates and stuff, and they never use it. And it just kind of seems like actually it's a waste of, you just wasted a whole lot of time. And I think with buddying, if you get the right combination, you can get really good little teams working together, doing stuff. So for me, it's that kind of buddying up, I think, is what I'd say is the most successful.
Do you always buddy with someone more experienced than you, or you just buddy two people that are perhaps on a learning path together of the same kind of experience?
It just depends. So it depends on the team who have got at times. So it can be both of those things you just described. I often think we also try and come up with silver bullets for stuff too often, whereas actually, it's 99% grey. So it's just how dark grey it is. And you just need to think about, what are my resource constraints? What are the thing I'm really trying to fix? What's the best way of doing it?
Yeah, no, fair comment. Let's talk about a big topic, and I know all the percentages, or I keep getting different percentages all the time about business expectations and people requests or job seeker requests, right? Let's talk about hybrid and remote working. What's your view?
So I think hybrid working really makes a lot of sense. So I remember when I was at HSBC, I had someone on my team, and she worked Mondays and Fridays, and she was the only person in the team to work Mondays and Fridays, and because she had kids and but there were other people with children in the team, and in the end I said, no, you can't work Monday and Friday, because the policy was you generally worked, and I didn't think it was right, but I also thought that you can't have one person on your team just working Monday, when you've got other people. I've got other people on my team who would like to work Mondays and Fridays
from home.
And now it turns out, you fast forward, and now everyone's working Mondays and Fridays pretty much from home, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and even then it's kind of one day really that everyone's in the office. But I think that one day in the office, I don't get that much work done, but I get a look. There's that communication, and there's a whole lot of other benefits from that.
Yeah.
So I think if you're able to work at home, because I find working at home super productive.
So do I.
So when I was at Allianz, I was going 2 hours to the office and 2 hours home from the office, right? So
Yeah.
4 hours a day. So when COVID hit, I was like, whoa, I've got 4 hours. What am I going to do with that? And, I was able to basically be so much more productive. So I was working less, but being so much more productive.
Yeah.
And I also had more time for me and the family, right? So I think,
Yeah.
and I think that's what a little bit, which is positive, is that we're starting to realize that actually work-life balance is important. We talked about it for a number of years as being important, but not really. Like, it was kind of like talked about as being important, but you still have to work 70 hours a week, and you have to work on the weekends. And because actually we all know that you can't work 70 hours every day. It's not productive. You don't think, you're just not productive, just period. So I think hybrid working really allows people to have a little bit more flexibility.
And as someone who has built teams, would you work for a business that said it was fully office based again?
No, because I don't think I could hire people. I know lots of good people who, work in different countries. And, if I wanted them on my team, which I would, I couldn't, because they were working remotely,
Yeah.
So before COVID, I was like, you can't run agile. You can't run agile remotely. Doesn't work. So is it as effective as if you're in the office every day? Probably not. But I also think if people are working in the right way, they can get a lot of work done, and just, so I think, it's probably, it's 85% is good.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you've got the right people, it can be as good, if not better.
Yeah, and we've seen the explosion of tools and technology to help you do this stuff, right? Collaboration is now, it's much easier than it used to be. We're a fully remote business, but we do get together. So I do understand what you're saying about some of the things you miss, some of those coffee chat conversations, which you might think wasting your time and you're desperate to get back to that meeting, but someone will just say something and it sparks something, or a conversation takes a different path just purely because you've got FaceTime and the way that people communicate. You can see their behavior, because you know what it's like when you get a message and you think, well, that's ranty, but actually it's not. It's not. Someone's writing it with a smile on their face, but it's not how it might be received. I think there's been a lot of that going on in the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a couple of examples recently where people are having conversations behind me, and I've just turned around and said, no, that's a data thing. So this is how it's going to be handled, right? This is not your area, right? This is how I think we need to handle it. Now tell me what you don't like about it. But they would have gone off and done a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
And actually they weren't really, I don't want to be disingenuous, but they weren't really well placed to make those decisions anyway. So, if I hadn't heard that conversation and butted in, then they would have done that. Now they kind of like, okay, good, Barry will sort that out. So give it to Barry, and they can go away and do stuff that, that's much more productive for the whole team.
Yeah, that's a good comment, that is. And I know exactly what you mean. The same thing happens to me every now and then when in my business, where something goes off, but it starts actually happening as well. Like, and there's been no interaction. I'm like, whoa, calm down. What's the biggest challenges you've faced in the data industry, right? So it's a very broad question.
So I think so I've kind of stopped networking a lot now, because I'm just sick and tired of the fact that we're not really doing anything that different than we were, when we started. So I remember when we first started, it was super exciting, and we share, so that's good. I still think there's a lot of sharing going on. But I don't think we're challenging ourselves enough to really do things differently.
Okay.
And there's so much noise around, it's ChatGPT at the moment and all the rest of it. But there's always some flavor of the month coming out, right?
Yeah.
And we're all jumping on it like it's going to be the silver bullet, and there is no silver bullet. And so I think for me, it's that the challenge is trying to make people see that actually we've got to be a little bit more honest with ourselves as data professionals. and stop jumping on the next shiny new thing, and really sort of saying, how do we really change the way we do stuff with data? Because everyone still talks about data like it's amazing and it's going to change everything, but actually there's very few really good examples across the entire organization where that's happening. There's more and more examples where it's happening in smaller pockets, and those pockets are getting bigger.
Yeah.
But I still think we're not hard enough on ourselves as data professionals, that we're really looking to do things a bit differently.
Do you think people are being very honest about where they are and how mature they might be as a business and a person?
I think I do think people share pretty openly when there's one-to-ones, or there's a small group of people, but generally no. I think there's a lot of hype where people are overselling what they're doing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of sticky plaster, these small mice running around wheels and stuff, and it's not the panacea that they're selling. It's a bit like someone was saying, it's marketing architecture as opposed to real architecture. Like the vendors will tell you they can do all this stuff, and then you get it in, and it's like, what? I've got to do this, and you've got to basically turn your head to the left and look upwards to make that work.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of that too from a vendor perspective as well. They're overselling their capabilities before they're really ready.
Yeah, because I don't think they're any more advanced than anyone else, right? They haven't built the internal capability either, because obviously, trying to recruit people can be difficult, build their own teams to deploy. And I also think that there is the challenge where businesses who are trying to build teams to answer these problems have to make it look more attractive than it actually is.
Yeah.
And that's hence why we get this, we're doing great over here, but actually when you lift the rug, it's maybe not quite as fancy as we originally thought. I definitely have conversations like that quite a lot. We're all talking about AI and ChatGPT and RPA and IoT and smart cities and everything else, you name it, right? It's definitely round the corner. We haven't got this bit right in data yet, and this is just going to bring a lot more data, let's be honest. What do you think's the next big trend in the field which is really going to go bang?
For me, I've been saying this for years: quantum computing. So if we start to build up, if we can start to build up and clean up our data, and then with AI improving the way it is, hopefully for good, right? We're managing it, and then you got quantum computing over the top of that. It's like boom. We might be able to work out how to fix some of the problems we've got around batteries being inefficient for electrical cars and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
We might be able to really solve some problems that we just couldn't solve otherwise.
Yeah.
But I'm also a little bit scared that we're a bit like the environment stuff. Everyone's talking about it like it's super important, and we can all see the impacts. But actually, no one's really doing anything, really. It's a bit like AI, right? You kind of think, wait a second, have we all forgotten about Cambridge Analytica and the real impacts of that's had on the world? It seems like that's just completely forgotten now, and we're all talking about ChatGPT, and it's just
And brings me back to that conversation we had over lunch about the Stephen Bartlett podcast with Mo Gord from ex-Google. Did you watch it?
Yeah.
Did you? What did you think?
It's, like I said, it's quite scary, right? It really is quite scary.
I think so.
I really think we can, if we do this right, we can really solve some big problems. I'm not really that hopeful, if I'm honest.
No,
that's a bit grim or a bit grim, but
I don't think so. I think it's an honest, appreciation of the situation, really. You've always said it how it is, Barry. I've got to be honest with you. All the time I've known you, you've always spoke very openly, which is brilliant. So if you're looking at in the field of data, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit now. So in 3 words, sum up what you think success looks like in our field.
Change with value.
Nice. Surely that's a title for another book.
Yeah, maybe that's another one of my catchphrases as well.
It could be. What does success look like to you? What does it mean to you personally?
I would like to have done something where I've contributed to part of that change for value. So it's, yeah, for me, it's about being able to leave and sort of have a career and look back and say, I made a not a difference to a business, but I actually made a difference to the way we do stuff with data, or I'm working with a couple of startups who've got some pretty good ideas, and they're not. It's not all about making money. It's actually about influencing, data for good type thing. So for me, that would be, having done something in that direction would be success.
Good. I love it. That's really, really good. Thinking about all the listeners, I love this question. It's one of my favorites. Tell me one thing that you think our audience will be surprised to learn about you.
Surprised to learn about me. I was in a movie so I quit my job in the bank
No way.
when I was like 21 or something, and I went to the US to become famous. So I was in a TV movie, and then I realized that the people in that industry were even more arrogant than me, and actually like way so, and I didn't want to work with them, so I went back to banking. So it's almost like one end of the pendulum to the other.
That's amazing. Oh God, no. I mean, I never knew that about you either. But what was the movie about?
It was one of those classic TV movies, with a good-looking guy and girl and the rest of it. I was just in a scene where I was in a dance, at a dance and stuff. I mean, I got asked to go back. To be honest, I got asked to go back and actually for a proper audition in a proper movie, and I was just like, nah, it's not what I want to do.
Do you reckon Hollywood's looking for a chief data officer?
I don't know. Maybe I could do a movie about a chief data officer.
There you go. Yeah, the rising chief data officer with Barry Green. Sounds brilliant. Look, so always ask, come to the end of the show now, Barry. I've really enjoyed this conversation so far, but always like to leave some kind of tip or something like that, right? Because I spend my life, with people coming through our business into the network, youngsters who want to get into the data world. What tips would you give the next generation of potential data talent?
So be curious. Don't be afraid to learn, and by that I mean make mistakes. And learn from everyone around you, basically. Like, everyone you interact with has value. Someone will do something better than you. Look at what they can do better than you and see how you can kind of take that on.
Yeah, really good advice, that. Yeah, I love that. There's been some really, really nice key takeaways for me in this conversation. So we've come to the end of the show now. Unless you've got any questions or anything else you wanted to say to the listeners.
No, I think we've covered most of it, Jez.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, thanks so much for taking the time out, because I know you're super busy anyway. But I think the key takeaways that I've taken from this: if you're building teams, let's build them up and build them with multiple skill sets. So do look for the hybrid where we can, so that you can get these people doing different things. Around talent strategy, concentrate on career path development and give people the freedom and framework to look at their own personal development. And I think that contributes to them feeling significant, contributing, and then your retention will be much better. I know you talked about onboarding and looking at people when you was looking at a little bit on the spectrum, and the requirement to manage those people differently. I think that's something that people in your position and others should be very aware of. I love the buddy system. Something that I'm actually going to take away. We've got kind of a bit of coaching going on at Eden Smith, but actually haven't got a buddy system. It might be time for us to look at that. So I'll take that on board. And
£4,900 plus VAT, mate.
Oh yeah, no worries. Send me an invoice, right? And I think we got a new Barry Green catchphrase. So is it going to change with value or change for value?
Change for value. Change for value.
Change for value. So I'll expect to see this next best-selling book on Amazon next year. Yeah. And for those listeners who are looking to get into the market and the data world, tips for you from Barry are: be curious, don't be afraid to learn, make mistakes, because that is where you learn, obviously, and learn from everyone around you. So be open to have those conversations. Barry, thanks so much for joining. I've really enjoyed the conversation, as I always do when I see you anyway, but really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
No worries. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.